Hey guys, welcome to the Asian Hustle Network podcast. My name is Brian.
And my name is Maggie.
And we interview Asian entrepreneurs around the world to amplify their voices and empower Asians to pursue their dreams and goals.
We believe that each person has a message and a unique story from their entrepreneurial journey that they can share with all of us.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Asian Hustle Network podcast. Today we have two special guests with us. They are Quinn Wang and Kristine Hara. Quinn is a UCSF-trained cataract surgeon and 2 times Duke alum, BA, MD, who graduated with highest distinction in English literature. She has published papers in leading journals such as Ophthalmology, designed and implemented a randomized clinical control trial, and pioneered bilateral cataract surgery in private practice. Outside of work, she regularly cycles up mountains and occasionally climbs up volcanoes on skis. Kristine is a 2-time founder who graduated from UC Berkeley with degrees BA, MS in biology, history, and information science. She has authored academic papers in data mining and computer science, piloted studies in computational cancer research, and evolutionary genetics, and shorted the fastest market crash in history. When not working, she enjoys road tripping across Africa and exploring ghost towns. She has also previously at Pandora and United Masters. Welcome to the show, Quinn and Kristine.
Thank you so much for having us. We're excited to chat about our story and have a great conversation.
Definitely. We're super excited to have you guys on the show as well. So we'll start with you, Quinn. Tell us about your upbringing. What was that like?
Okay, happy to. I was actually born in China, in Hunan, and my parents came over when I was 1. My dad went to med school in China and came to the U.S. to do a PhD to get his foot in the door and become a resident and eventually work his way up to full professor of medicine at Rutgers. So he's got like a very prototypical Asian immigrant story where like on this journey, he started out, he was 30 and he had $50 in his pocket. He loves to emphasize that point. He came to OHSU and started doing his PhD. My mom came and joined him for from ages 1 to 2. I was raised by my maternal grandparents. And when I came over to the States, to Portland, my mom said that I didn't recognize her and my dad, and I hid behind my grandma, and it was heartbreaking for her. And it's weird to think about, but I'm not the only one who's had this experience. I've talked to other Asian kids who, their parents, in an effort to set them up for success, came over to the U.S. first and then brought their kids over later, and the kids are like, who are you? And then it's like a matter of relationship building. And then from that point on, we moved around the country a whole ton because of my dad's training. He did his PhD and his postdoc. He got into a residency program in like a pretty dangerous part of Brooklyn, where he dealt with a lot of racism and kind of hid that from us as we were growing up. And he did a fellowship and, as I mentioned, is now a professor of medicine and attending at Rutgers. So growing up, there was a lot of moving around. Didn't really see my dad that much. My mom was in many ways a tiger mom who sat me down during the summers and made me do math problems and write Chinese characters. And so every summer I would disappear while my friends went to summer camp and on vacations. I was just studying. And then eventually transitioned into down BitTorrenting, anime, and LimeWire, stuff like that. And that's pretty much the broad strokes of it. My mom, I credit her a lot for my work ethic, but have complicated feelings about, the way I was raised, just like I'm sure a lot of people who are listening can relate to. So I'll stop there.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing, Quinn. And it sounds like, both of your parents were, very, they were very accomplished, and it sounds like they had a lot of influence into, how you were raised. And I love how you shared that you were, BitTorrenting anime and spending your free time doing that. Would love to hear from you, Kristine, on, your upbringing as well.
Yeah. I mean, I too was BitTorrenting anime at that time. Who wasn't? But actually, I had a really different experience from Quinn growing up. I think I'm one of the few Asians that didn't have tiger parents. I actually am super jealous of all my friends. I wish I had tiger parents. Oh wait, okay, if my parents are listening, maybe I don't want to say that. I think I grew up in a household where I'm fourth generation Japanese. And so it's sort of like a mix of maybe the white suburban experience, but then some Asian heritage. Like we still, celebrate with traditional Japanese food on New Year's, but then it's a lot more free reign. I was allowed to run around, do whatever I wanted when I was a kid. A lot of freedom. I guess there's that stereotype of American kids that go home and yell at their parents. Maybe that was sometimes me. I think it was a really amazing environment, I think, for entrepreneurship, because I think I grew up in this environment where I didn't feel that I was constrained in anything I wanted to do. I felt like I had the freedom to try. And then, so I guess eventually that led me into college at UC Berkeley. I think almost because I had so much freedom, I actually didn't know what I wanted to be in life. And I almost wish I had somebody to tell me then. But I think if somebody had told me, it might have been the wrong thing, right? It's always the grass is always greener. And so I spent a long time. I did a lot of different majors. I did history and biology because they were just polar opposites. And I was well, I like the sciences. I also really like the humanities. I liked reading a lot. That's something Quinn and I have in common. We were both humanities majors in undergrad. I guess from there, I think eventually I graduated and I got out of college and I was oh no, the thing I didn't cover was actually computer science. If that was the right fit. It just I think, Sacramento is very sort of agricultural and government focused. And it just never occurred to me that programming computers was a thing. I think somebody came up to me on my very first day at Cal and they were oh, I'm a computer science major. And I definitely offended her because I was what is computer science? And so after a lot of twists and turns, I've somehow ended up here as a software engineer.
That's awesome. I mean, I also come from a software engineering background too. And, moving to the Bay, it was software this, software that. And it's you really had to get into tech, So I'm kind of curious too, how did you two meet and how did this company come about?
I first wanted to piggyback on what Kristine said about not really knowing what she wanted to do. So I come from clearly a more strict background. And when I got to college, I also didn't know what I wanted to do. So I saw the struggles that my dad went through with medicine. And I was I don't know if that's for me. But I went to a place, Duke, where it seemed like the only acceptable career paths were medicine, law, iBanking, consulting, poli-sci. And I thought all of them were kind of evil. And to me, medicine was the least evil, but I felt like I was signing a deal with the devil because I knew that I wouldn't have the freedom to really explore the part of me that was more creative and more curious, and already was feeling very suffocated by the way that I grew up and suffocated by the notion of being in one career path and not knowing how I as a person fit into that. And so doing a humanities path, becoming an English major was my gift to myself to learn and explore the other side of my brain. And as I was going through med school and residency, with each step, I said to myself, I'm closer to this position in society that would be respected and enable me to really help people, and my parents would be proud and their sacrifices would be worth it. And then with each step, I was like, oh my God, I feel very trapped in my desire to make things more efficient and humane for my classmates, my colleagues, for patients. Like it just wasn't nurtured, and there was so much red tape, and everyone knows that the healthcare system is super broken, and I've been on both sides, and it's just horrible. And so I have for a long time been feeling like I want to put my own spin on this path that I've ventured on kind of unwillingly. I fortunately matched at UCSF for ophthalmology, which brought me to the Bay Area, and shortly before graduating realized that it would behoove me to learn about tech world and start making inroads, building my network. And along the way, I met Kristine through South Park Commons, which is a community for tinkerers and technologists. In tech, it's like an in-person community. And I joined actually shortly before shelter in place came down. And by the time Kristine and I met, it was all virtual. So that is...
We met in a Slack channel.
Met in a Slack channel. And Kristine was wanting to work on something healthcare related, and I'll let her talk a little bit more about that. And everyone was like, you should talk to Quinn. She's like a healthcare person. And at the time I was working as an attending cataract surgeon part-time in San Francisco, and my clinic was closed because eye exams were deemed to be non-essential. And so there was like this element of, oh my God, I made it to the end. Part of the reason I stayed in this was for job security, and actually went into private practice. My clinic closed and I didn't even have job security. So I was like, I've been tortured for so long and I don't even get to reap the benefits. And, it's just out of need and frustration, I started working on this tool that would allow me to gather objective data from patients about their eyeballs. Like when they call and say, Dr. Wang, my vision is crappy or my eye hurts. Historically, there's no way to tell if there's something actually wrong. It's a matter of gleaning details from the person's story. Like, I woke up and I hit my head and then a shadow came over my eye and now I can't see. And I'm like, what do you mean you can't see? Are you like, can you not see any light? Or can you just not see as clearly as you normally could? So the problem of not having objective data is something that really bothered me. And I looked into it. I realized there were no remote tools for providing eye care. Then I started working on that. And Kristine joined me after she had an eye problem. And I was able to help her with the thing I built.
Yeah, so I come to Quinn with all of my hypochondriac questions about anything medical related. But I think especially then, because it was a pandemic and it was lockdown, I was trying to bleach my own hair because salons were closed. I normally have ABG hair. It's a little sad right now. But yeah, I think during the process, I got bleach in my eye and I discovered how kind of like annoying it is to try to do remote eye care. Like I talked to my GP, but it's like a Zoom meeting. And so he can't really like actually examine my eye. And then my eye was like getting worse and worse. And I was like putting these drops in, but it just seemed like it was so hard to tell, is like this doing anything? What if like something goes wrong with my vision? And it's so like, I think to any job, vision is like essential, like, especially, if you're a programmer and you can't see, well, I think it's you have to change careers. But like, yeah, I think when I tried it, I was really like, oh, this is, I think it also resonated for me because I've had chronic health issues my whole life. And it wasn't until this year actually that I found a lot of them were due to this rare immune system condition. And I think this resonated because it's very similar. It's like when you have more visibility into like the human body, like the more tests you can do, the more like objective data you can gather, the more you actually like have the reality of what's going on. And then people don't get misdiagnosed or mistreated. So that was something that really excited me about working with Quinn. And it's funny because like we actually only met once in person before diving into this like insane journey of entrepreneurship. We met in a Slack channel, chatted a bit. I like went off to Mexico to live by the beach for the pandemic. I figured there wasn't a lot going on in San Francisco. And actually through this time when I went to Mexico, we're trying to do remote work without really having done remote work before. In Mexico, actually, like when I went there, it was hurricane season. So there were a bajillion hurricanes. Sometimes my power would get knocked out for days. I was taking these like fizzy water showers and like Quinn would just like, I think the communication, like working with a new co-founder is already hard enough if you like don't know each other that well. But then you're like, when you add natural disasters to the mix and like about a month after we met, we had our YC interview. It was like crazy, but it's one of those things where it's definitely like, it was an arranged marriage, but it's like worked out incredibly well. We've been through a lot in the last few months together.
Wow, that is incredible that you two had met through Slack. And Kristine, I just wanted to point out your hair still looks amazing. So don't it look bad.
Thank you.
I wanted to commend you guys because it is already hard to, find ways to work really well with your co-founder, even in person, and for you to, work together mostly through virtually. It's extremely hard. And I want to commend you guys for that. It takes a lot of hard work. And Quinn, I read in an article that you had previously had no tech experience. And I think it was in 2019 where you said you at that time. And I think that's amazing that you were able to, build this company with no tech experience. But, Kristine, you come from a computer science and software engineering background. I'm very curious, what were some of those struggles that you had, Quinn, with, very minimal tech experience, and how are you two able to complement each other in, every way possible?
So as an example of how little I knew about tech, I had patients when I was a resident who worked at Salesforce, and I was like, what the hell is Salesforce? And they would tell me, it's SaaS, it's a CRM. And I was like, can you please explain to me what SaaS means? And they're like, oh yeah, software as a service. And I would say, isn't all software some sort of service? I don't understand why there needs to be like another, a phrase for it. And also, what is a CRM? I don't understand. I asked several patients about this, and they're like, it's a CRM, you use it every day. But anyway, I didn't know what Slack was. I didn't know what Stripe was. I didn't know about Square. I didn't even like DoorDash stuff. That's how insulated I was. I don't know why I didn't DoorDash stuff, but what happened was I went from that to discovering through a friend a piece of SaaS called Typeform. It's survey software, and I used that to torture out a whole online eye exam. And so it's a matter of, I think, having an idea and figuring out the scrappiest, jankiest way to make it happen. And, at the end of the day, I just needed some data, and I figured out how to get it. And that speaks to my thoughts that you don't have to have like a very traditional software background to start doing interesting things in the space. Hardware is a little bit different. But despite not being technical in the software sense, I consider myself to be quite technical in the ophthalmology sense. And so I'm in some ways a technical co-founder as well. And just like from a different realm. And so I'm able to articulate things using my expertise, and Kristine helps me translate that into more software stuff. And I've definitely learned a lot from her. The phrase machine learning gets thrown around a lot, and she sent me a video that was like elementary school level, and it really helped. But don't ask me to explain it. I'm a little bit nervous to put my spin on it.
I mean, that's the perfect marriage, right? Just complement each other's expertise. That's the best type of co-founder relationship that we found, especially having this podcast and talking to people. Kristine, can you tell us more about Quadrant Eye and what you guys actually do for your product?
Yeah. So we actually have like a set of different products. I don't know how much I'm supposed to say today, but the first product that we started with is prescription renewals. And it was something actually, we originally were building a telemedicine clinic for some lightweight eye problems, like styes, dry eyes. And then we found that people were searching for online eye exam, but when they found us, and they would find us this way, but they actually really just wanted their glasses, contacts, prescriptions renewed. And we were like, that's actually, from a technical standpoint, that's not too difficult. So we spun that up, and yeah, it was an interesting experience to do all these landing pages and find that this problem was like very sticky. Just like people are always looking for it, especially in a pandemic. You don't really want to go into your appointment and potentially risk getting COVID just because you need to buy new contacts. And I guess, Quinn, I don't know if you want to talk more about the eye health portion, which is what we're diving into next.
So it's interesting, this problem of finding product market fit, which is a concept that I didn't quite understand because given my clinical surgical background, I am used to like having problems to solve and solving them in a way that is like, obviously you should treat this disease this way. If you have a cataract, I take it out with surgery. But product market fit is something that's different. It's determined by the market, the customer, and like a huge lesson for me, and that was very humbling, was that I actually don't know shit about what people actually want. And like medical training doesn't prepare you for really seeing patients as like humans who might have preferences that are very justified. For example, waiting 3 hours in clinic is not chill. But as a resident, if a patient complained about waiting, an hour, we'd be like, excuse me, we slept for 3 hours and we're very overworked. And typically the wait time is 3 hours. So 1 hour is not that bad. So coming from that background and dealing with this question of product market fit and realizing that people wanted something different from what I was envisioning was very like traumatic in a way, because I was like, I'm learning so much, and the skills that I gained through being operating on people and being on call for long periods of time only partially translated. And so but I do want to take my experiences and my learnings to push us in a direction that will really, really benefit people in all aspects of eye health. What people don't realize when it comes to eyeballs is that there's two broad buckets. The first one is vision. Maggie, I see you wear glasses, and I know Brian wears glasses as well, and I have a refractive error, and Kristine also wears glasses and contacts. So there's vision, which is what can you see? Are you 20/20? Are you 20/40? And if you're 20/40, what kind of glasses or contact lens prescription do you need to get to 20/20? So that's vision, and that's what most people think about. And that is not all of it, though. There's another bucket, which is where ophthalmologists really they operate, which is eye health. Are you someone who's at risk for glaucoma? Do you have a family history of retinal degeneration, and therefore we have to screen you every year? Like, what if you have diabetic eye disease? What is your rate of progression and how often do we have to see you? And this latter part, the eye health portion, isn't really that embedded in like societal awareness. And most people are just like, oh, that's like stuff for old people. But in fact, we all have eyes. Kristine mentioned, like vision is incredibly important, and vision is tied to eye health. So like the glasses and contact lens part and like the eye history, risk factors, they are treated as two distinct things just because of the way the industry has been broken down, but they are inextricably intertwined. And so that is my long way of saying that our ultimate goal is to move, in addition to being able to renew prescriptions, be able to provide eye health services to folks anywhere, including in eye health deserts. And the way we get to that is very complicated and requires a lot of technological finesse that Kristine is taking the charge on. We just hired employee number 1, and he's also Asian American, incredibly scrappy, has a non-traditional background, college dropout, but like incredibly smart and very curious, and exactly the type of person we need to move through these stages of getting more and more sophisticated and being able to change the way people perceive and receive eye care. So it's super exciting. And along the way, we've gotten to meet awesome people like yourselves who are interested in crafting a life and a career that may look quite different from what our parents had imagined for us.
Yeah, I really like that you touched upon the subject too, because our parents imagined us to be like traditional jobs, lawyers, doctors, whatever, engineers, and having this untraditional thing, it's like there's more to it, because at first they're not very supportive, but then as you've shown that it is possible, they become more and more supportive. I'm like, oh, at the end of the day, it's like I just want to make sure my kid is happy and doing things that are benefiting the world in a very good place. And I really like the fact that you touched upon your first employee, like the sense of curiosity. I feel like nowadays it's a lot different for me, right? Before it was like pedigree. I was like, where'd you go to school? Like, what'd you study? Nowadays it's like, I feel like, yeah, that is important, but a person's curiosity will take you much further. And a person's curiosity will open more doors for the company, because the creativity it's actually really hard to find, in a person. So I do commend you for saying that, especially as a founder as well. So thank you for that.
Yeah, Sorry, Kristine, I'll say one thing about that. I think the educational structure that we're used to is becoming a little more irrelevant, and it really should be more centered on teaching people how to be curious and exploring their interest, which is a very soft and complicated skill, but much more valuable than, say, rote memorization, which is gets you far, but only so far. You hit a ceiling.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's something that we're thinking a lot about as we build the early team, because I think something Quinn and I have in common is we started on this like predefined, safe path, difficult but safe. And then we realized like, this isn't what is making me happy. Like, I want something more. Like, it seems like, oh, we've achieved everything that society says is good, but there's something missing. And I think, we build a team looking for people like that, people that want to color outside of the lines, people that want to, go on this like crazy journey to find product market fit, that are really comfortable with, chaos and uncertainty, but are actually like excited by this, rather than, staying in this like predefined structure that society has created.
Absolutely. I agree with all of you three. And, I think my parents just, recently said, they were just talking about, like my relatives and cousins saying like, oh, he should become a doctor or a lawyer. But they really have to think about, is this something that they even want to do, But I think that if you put someone in a career where they're actually passionate about something, they actually fall in love with that career, they can go so much further than, being stuck in a career where they don't actually enjoy being in. So I do want to switch gears a little bit and talk about Y Combinator. And I know that Quadrant Eye got into YC. We'll love to hear about the process of, being in YC, and how did that make you two feel? And what were the challenges? What were the breakthroughs during the whole process?
This is a complicated question in a lot of ways. But okay, so YC is another thing that I didn't know existed. And as Kristine and I, in our early stages of working together and dealing with the uncertainty of being in startup world, I in particular felt extremely uncomfortable with the uncertainty. I was like in a total mind fuck about it, actually. And I really credit Kristine for being patient with me and sticking with me through like the crazy shit that I was saying and dealing with. Like, again, it was, I went from being like a resident at a top surgical program and then like an attending doing very interesting surgical things to being in my room dealing with Google ads and
type form online.
I was like, oh my God. So I was looking for a little more structure. And then like by that point I had heard about YC, and I didn't tell Kristine about thinking about it until like the night before the deadline. And I was like, Kristine, by the way, let's do YC. And we did our very first sprint together, which was to fill out our YC application. And then like we got it in right before the deadline, and corralled our friends. At this point, I like somehow built out a network of fellow founders who were able to put in really great recommendations for us. And we got an interview on the very first day of interviews, and were pretty nervous and didn't think we could do it. And Kristine, I think, might have propped up her phone on a pineapple.
There was a coconut.
It was a coconut. Okay, it was a coconut. She propped her phone up on a coconut for the interview.
In these tropical Airbnbs sometimes.
And I put my laptop on a series of cardboard boxes on like a stool to get it up to, because I wanted to stand for the interview. I'm like saving the photo for when we IPO. Like this is just like, it was crazy. There's a bunch of cardboard boxes, and I, stood there and we killed it. I like drew up on all my reserves to answer their questions very confidently, even though I didn't feel confident inside. I was like, I need to like project my power and confidence as an Asian woman surgeon doing this hard thing. And, Kristine, having her in my corner and just like knowing that we were both like had these coconuts and cardboard boxes on board. It's just like, what is really that hard if we're like doing this cool interview in kind of suboptimal conditions? But we did great. Kristine was awesome, and a few hours later we got a call from Jared Friedman saying that we got in. And I think both Kristine and I were like, shit, what do we do now? Yeah. I'll let Kristine talk a little more about
That's
it.
a great problem to have, by the way. A lot of people spend months and months preparing for the application process, and you guys spend the night before. So congratulations on that.
I wanted to talk about that too, Quinn. Like the night before, you should like see how like I act when Brian and I are getting ready to like submit applications to an accelerator. I'm just like panicking, like I have to get this right and perfect, like every word, every sentence, every period. So the night before is just amazing. Kristine,
We had so many of our amazing friends like jump in on like, a Saturday and give us a mock interview right before. Yeah, it was actually the day before my birthday. So like all of my birthday plans got canceled. But it was so, I think it's just as well that we did it last minute, because I think it's almost like the more time you have, the more time you have to feel the pressure. And, just I think we went in and we were pretty genuine. And I think, Quinn already has all of this like dense medical knowledge, and like she's been almost like thinking about this problem for years, I think, in the back of her head. And so like, I guess for me, I did know a lot about YC before. I actually had a lot of imposter syndrome, I think, around it, because I've seen like, so many friends and so many people that are just, acquaintances, but like really great entrepreneurs go through YC. And I always was like, I don't think I'm that caliber, but I would love, I'd love to get into YC, but I don't really know if this is in the cards. And like, I think, to get in was like incredible. And also to like find that, the people in the batch are like, really talented. A lot of people, there's a good chunk of people that already have had successful startups before. And then, the partners are like on this insane level, but they're all incredibly nice, down to earth humans. And so like, especially because entrepreneurship has so many like crazy ups and downs, especially, for us, we were a very young startup when we got in. It was just like amazing to have these partners who, if you wanted to Slack them about like an emergency on a Saturday evening, they would actually be there and respond and, be willing to jump on a Zoom call. We had, we had so much as this too during the raise, I think, where they were, it's like incredible. They have 80 startup children in every group. But somehow they managed to like spend a lot of time with all of their child companies and give a lot of help and advice. And so we're really thankful for that. I think Quinn's done an amazing job, because I saw this girl like, right after demo day. Raising is pretty intense, and like we had a very early product. I actually built the MVP during YC in a few weeks. It was like pretty janky, very fast, but like I think Quinn took this product and took, over 80 meetings to raise our seed round. So props, Quinn. Thank you for that.
Congratulations. That is not an easy feat, and it's very draining, very morally draining. But once you get it done, that's nothing like it. So congratulations on that.
Thank you so much. I would say, so I took 85 meetings over the course of 2.5 weeks, because I knew that time was of the essence. And I was very aware that just because we were in YC and we had demo day was no guarantee that we would be able to raise. In fact, there are some companies in our batch that are still raising and some that have deferred. So like, if I could do anything, I would like to dispel the myth that if you get into YC, and you get to demo day, it's a sure thing that you'll raise. And it is ultimately, YC, you can consider it as jet fuel, but you have to have a rocket and you have to have a good pilot. And like in this case, yes, I went in with a very, very, very strict attitude where, I took a bunch of meetings every day, and got better and better at telling the story, and really built up my confidence level the more meetings that I took, and just fucking knocked it out of the park. I mean, we oversubscribed our round, and like our lead is a tier 1 lead that I had never heard of, because again, my background, and like I just didn't think that it would happen, and the momentum's in our favor. Kristine and I created a lot of circumstances, some by accident, to maximize our luck and our chances of success. Kristine built the product from scratch during YC, and we had like over 100 customers, despite all these bugs that we were facing and all the fear that I had about, being perceived as a physician who's like a snake oil salesman. There's like a whole other thing going into in medicine, where if you go into entrepreneurship in a way that is not like a very, very, kind of set path. Like in medicine, entrepreneurship is about developing cool hardware and like very slowly going through the FDA and clinical trials, which we will need to do. But like, if you deviate from that path, they're like, oh yeah, you're just making an app, or like, you just care about money. Like, look at us, we're doing our hardware thing. So anyway, I was facing a lot of that as well, grappling with feeling uncomfortable about having a product that isn't complete out there, getting shade from physicians as well as optometrists who weren't really understanding what I was doing and really put the worst of intentions on me. And on top of that, being a woman, an Asian woman, it was just like a bag of weird stuff to sort out, and still sorting that out. I think it will continue to follow me. But yes, at the end of the day, we did an awesome job. It didn't really feel like it in the moment, but yeah, looking back,
it kind of felt like sliding down a mountain. Like, you know, if you fall and start like rolling down the cliff, that but then at the end you like kind of like happen in this your destination. It's like, wow, that was rough, but we survived, and actually things went really, really well.
This is entrepreneurship in a nutshell. But I'm kind of curious too, like, what is the next step for Quadrant Eye? Like, what are you guys hoping to accomplish for the rest of the year and for 2022, looking ahead?
Before I forget, this is related. Part of our success leading up to Demo Day actually is Asian Hustle Network. Kristine had the brilliant idea of promoting our product on Facebook group, in the Facebook group. And we told our story about, you know, being Asian American and being brave enough to step outside of the expectations that on my end, my parents put on me. Kristine's end, it was like, sounds like a lot of internal and as well as like the invisible societal forces at play. But yeah, our post was so well received, and it just like touched me in a way that I hadn't felt in a while, because I predominantly in a self-preservation effort, predominantly was not identifying with being Asian American. For me, it was more like being a woman and being a surgeon, and then like more tertiary Asian American, because I felt very much like I had to fight against this image of me as like a young looking doll person who was very who is expected to be quite deferential and obedient. And I really, 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 really resented that and fought against it. But like, you know, just seeing all the comments on our post and watching it go viral made me realize that, you know, this is an incredibly important part of my identity. And in fact, on this journey, the strongest sources of support have come from my Asian fam. So that is like a detour that I wanted to make it, and like it's because it's just like such an important part of the journey, and becoming more and more important, because, you know, one of our backers is a new fund that is geared toward Asian Americans. They're in stealth right now, and they don't have a track record because they're new, but I just felt like it was worth it for both Quadrant Eye and this fund to support each other and start building a reputation of Asian American founders being very powerful and formidable, and just like, don't fuck with us. You know, we might look a certain way, but we are not. And it's important to put a strong face forward, especially during this current political climate. And that being said, we have massive ambition for where Quadrant Eye is going to go. Like, we're thinking of a new category of healthcare that we're calling at-home eye care. It's like intuitive, but also people hear about that and they're like, what about all the big pieces of equipment in the office? Like, what can you possibly do in the home to simulate an eye exam, to approximate it? And there's actually a lot. There's so much, and we can get to a point where we can do routine eye care at home. And that is the goal. Ultimately, there's of course always going to be a place for ophthalmologists and optometrists to provide very important complex care in person. Surgery is another aspect, but there are a lot of eye problems in situations that can and should be managed remotely. And a lot of routine visits can be done in the home. And in 5 years, we hope that at-home eye care is a very intuitive, obvious thing, just like, charging your phone is a reflex. We hope that someone who is having an eye problem can just activate our service, just without thinking about it. There's a lot of not more thoughts I have about this, but the broad strokes are to create a new kind of eye care.
I just wanted to add too, I think there's something that, I think Quinn knew about this before we were working on the project, but we've discovered this in, I think, increasing amounts as we interact with users. A lot of the users that found just our online prescription clinic are, we found from our drift chat, they're coming from small towns. And so there's some of these other healthcare companies where they work with healthcare deserts, areas where, people have limited access to care. Maybe you're in a remote region, or, you're in a smaller town and there's a wait for the specialists that are there. And so in some places we've talked to people who have to drive over 2 hours just to go see an optometrist. I think when all of us are from cities, and so this seems very unusual. It seems like it would affect very few people, but there are a lot of people in the US that are impacted by this. And I think this is something that we really want to build out for in the next year, finding these people that, should have eye care, but maybe you aren't getting it. And especially those that are at high risk for age-related eye issues.
Thanks so much for sharing that, you guys. It's really awesome just hearing about, the future, and you guys thinking about the future of Quadrant Eye. And, hopefully we will get to a place one day where we can just think about eye care like it is a reflex. And I know we will get there. And Quinn, thank you so much for sharing about AHN and the support that it has been for your company and the both of you. I think a lot of people had resonated with it just because you guys just show so much resiliency, and there is probably a lot of people inside the community that are in ophthalmology, who are trying to sway away from this one path, this linear path in this career, right? And there are, a lot of Asian American women probably in this industry as well who really look up to you and what you guys are building, which is really inspirational for your entire story. And we have one last question for the both of you, and that is, if you could give one advice to an aspiring entrepreneur, what would that one advice be?
I think for me, it would be, it's so corny, but I think don't give up. But so for me, I a year ago, right, I had my first startup, I had just run out of funding, and I was do I go on this journey again, or do I go and get a normal job? Probably I should have, especially in the middle of a pandemic, right? Because I had really just COVID had just hit and there were no jobs, and especially in San Francisco, it's hard to survive without steady income. And I think at the time, like common sense would have told me to just like, sit down, get a job, like work on a startup on the side. That's actually like what a lot of people told me to do, and I ignored it. But yeah, I'm so thankful I did, because I think I've changed so much as a person, and I'm like also really thankful to be on this journey with Quinn. I think I was in bad shape when she found me, and so like, but things have gone really well since.
We found each other. You kind of fell into my lap. It's like, who are you? I will also echo what Kristine said about like the personal growth aspect. So doing a startup has challenged me in ways that medicine did not and does not, mainly in that there's always so many fires to put out and so much like accountability to yourself and to the team that you have to have the internal resources to be able to make good decisions and also stay healthy for the sake of the company. And along those lines, the piece of advice that I would give, and I think needs to be emphasized more, is that there's so much self-limiting belief when it comes to doing something hard. What I mean by that is a lot of people think that because an undertaking seems impossible or too hard, they don't do it. And that, or they think they can't do it, they might try, but they're like, I'm going to fail anyway. And going in with the mindset of this is too hard, like, why am I doing this? What is even the point? Really sets you up for not being able to do it. And one great book that I read is called The Big Leap, which talks a lot about like how people inflict unnecessary suffering on themselves and also shoot themselves in the foot by just like having this mindset of not being good enough, this thing being too hard. So ultimately it comes down to realizing how powerful your mind is, which is both scary and very encouraging, because once you believe in yourself, you're unfucking stoppable. Like, seriously, this thing that Kristine and I are doing, it's insane. It's insane. Like, just even thinking about the hate mail that I've gotten, and you can see some of it in the comments on our HN post. It's like, if you don't believe in yourself, no one else is going to believe in you. If you don't believe in yourself enough to invest in your mental health and your ability to lead, it's not going to happen. And so all this, is to say that you have the power to make shit happen. You just have to believe in yourself and tap into that well that is the power of the human mind. And that will get you to a place that Kristine is talking about where you just won't give up. Just don't give up. And startups at the end of the day also are like, it's an attrition game. People give up. And so the startup dies. If you keep at it long enough, good things will happen. And like the opportunities, you just create them by virtue of staying alive. Yeah. So that's.
No, I absolutely agree with that. I saw a quote somewhere saying that startups don't die after funding runs out. They die after the passion runs out. And I think that's so true. Like, I see like a lot of friends who you just tell they're just no longer passionate. They don't want to just push through and grind through and ride the waves. Because if you want to look for solutions are everywhere. But you have to be willing to like put yourself through that much pain again to keep it going. So that's a whole different story that we can talk about later.
Absolutely. Love that advice, both of you, Quinn and Kristine. So for our listeners, where can they find out more about the both of you and Quadrant Eye?
Well, we have our AHN post that's in the queue somewhere. But like our company website, quadranteye.com, has our bios on there and obviously talks about our services, also talks a little bit about the mission. The goal is to bring high quality eye care to everyone. And as part of that, for every purchase that's made through us, every time someone uses our service, $1 goes to Lighthouse for the Blind, which is a nonprofit that I've referred a lot of low vision patients to. And I think what they're doing is incredibly important. So our website, and then I recently started a Medium account for our company. It's quadranteye.medium.com. And that is where we talk a lot about our company culture and philosophy and how we want to really empower our team to take it to the next level, whether or not they stick with us in the long term. But we really want to give people the skills and at the very least the confidence to leap to new heights with us, or start their own startup, or join their dream company if it's not Quadrant Eye down the line. And then I'm on Twitter. It's Quinn IQ. And it's not really, I don't really tweet anything directly related to eye stuff, but it's fun. So you should follow me.
Awesome. And Kristine, do you have any handles you'd like to share?
No, I think it's okay. Yeah, yeah. Just find me on LinkedIn.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for sharing, Kristine and Quinn. We will leave all those in the show notes of this podcast. It was amazing hearing your story today. We really appreciate you both for being on our podcast.
Yeah, thank you too so much for your incredible story and your incredible success so far. We can't wait to see how the story unfolds.
Thanks so much for having us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been a great time and really an honor. And again, I will end by saying that you can do great shit regardless of your background. And just having this community that we all share will it makes a huge difference, So thanks again, and we'll see you around.
Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe to the show.
We would like to get to the top 10 on iTunes, so be sure to leave us a 5-star review. We release an episode every single Wednesday, so stay tuned.
Thank you guys so much.